So, a couple of days after Christmas, I'm still filled with thoughts on this, what it means, what it is we're truly celebrating. But first, a joke. Man walks into a coffee shop, and the barista behind the bar says, "How do you want your coffee? How do you take your? I'm sorry." He says, "How do you take your coffee?" And the man says, "Very, very seriously." All right, I kind of blew that punchline, but there you have it. So today's talk is called You Are Beautiful. And what I've been thinking about is the beauty of life's unfoldment for each of us and the impact we have on others. And particularly when you start getting up in years, I think that the idea for myself, who's just turned 65, of thinking about what is my legacy? What am I leaving behind? What have what has been my imprint on life itself has become more and more something I think about. And what I realized was that actually I and everyone has made an impact. We have already done this. We have already, throughout our lives, impacted others. Some of us get to hear about that more than others. If you're Taylor Swift, you get to hear about your impact on others on a fairly regular basis. But if you're one of us, you don't. And yet, I know with absolute certainty that we do have positive impact on those around us. Now, how do I know this? I know this for several different reasons. I know that the impact must be positive because all impact is positive, no matter what, because that's what we teach here. What we teach here is that there is nothing negative going on. Everything is for our good. So every time you have interacted with somebody else or out in the world, that interaction must have been positive, even if you weren't at your best. You have nothing to regret because each person gets to interpret that interaction the way they did. And because we walk out into the world, because we're not sitting at home, and even if we are, we're talking on the phone or we're interacting with those in our household, we are having impact. And the thing about this impact is it carries. When we interact with life, whatever beings of life that may be, those beings of life are then interacting with others, who are interacting with others, who are interacting with others. The beauty of who you are is being carried on in ways that you cannot even imagine. Trish was talking about how we have nothing to fear. And I want to be very clear that this is one of the things that you do not need to fear. Whether you have done good in the world, had impact, left a legacy that will carry on, there's absolutely no way that you haven't. It isn't even possible. Everything we do interacts with life. And in that interaction, you have done good. You have left your mark. Whether you know it or not, whether there's a big parade in your honor or not, whether there's even a tombstone or not, whether people are talking about you after you're gone or not. Your beingness has impacted the rest of humanity. So one of the things I want you to do right now is close your eyes, take a deep breath, and thank yourself for being here. Thank yourself for the life you've led and the people you have impacted by interacting with them. Thank yourself for being who you are. Good. Feel that. Let that in. Don't let this be the last time that you do this. Let yourself feel that place where if nobody ever says thank you to you, if nobody ever acknowledges who you really are, that you can do it for yourself. You can do it anytime or any place where you start feeling some fear around being unseen, being unheard, or not having impact on the world. I promise you that you have, as has everyone else. Each of us shows up and has impact in our own way. You don't have to be President Lincoln to have impact. You don't have to be President Trump to have impact. You just need to be you. You. Being who you are, moving through life. Now, as I thought about this, I thought about history and how people have been impacting civilization since the beginning of time. And that as we grow as a civilization, and I don't mean in numbers, though certainly that has happened as well, I mean our consciousness. I mean, over the past 50,000 years, we are so much more conscious today as a civilization. I'm sure many of you have heard me tell the tale of back in the Middle Ages, how you could be at an inn having dinner and the person next to you gets killed and you wouldn't even blink an eye, you would keep eating because it was such a normal circumstance to happen. There is not a single one on the planet today. Well, odds are there's some people, but most people today could not sit so accepting and like it was no big deal to have somebody killed next to you today. That is a growth in consciousness that is not always recognized or acknowledged. Now, you have heard me speak about the Prime Directive, where I believe everything is moving in a more awareness, more loving manner. And it is the outing of those things in life that are not that way that actually is the proof. Because there was so much time in our history where we have not outed that which does not, which is not loving the way we do now. Black Lives Matters is a new movement showing a new level of consciousness towards lovingness, even with all the resistance against it. Even with all the white supremacists who we now see, who, if you're anything like me, knew they were on the fringes, but had no idea the amount of racism that actually went on in our country. And now that I know it, that is an awareness that grows all our consciousnesses. We actually grow with this. President Trump did us a wonderful service, but he's not the only one. We can go back through history. I mean, everybody sees Hitler, as I do, as a horrible, evil person but what he brought was a tremendous rise in consciousness to the rest of us having to stand up and call that out. Wait a minute, that's evil. Wait a minute, that's not okay. Who knows how long it would have taken us to recognize such evil if somebody had not stood up so strongly in that spot for us all to see. This has been going on since the beginning of time. People standing up in a way in which everybody else goes, wait a minute, that's not okay. I mean, the thing about all this is in our teaching, we believe that everything is for our good. Well, we can't just be saying that about our own lives. We can't just be saying that about our loved ones. It has to be true for civilization itself. And that's the real key here. When we look at all that has happened throughout history that we might call evil, we have to look at it given what we believe as it has been for civilization's good, which means it's for your good. When we look out and we see something we don't like, that we then make a stand for and hold in our consciousness what we believe to be the truth, then whatever that thing is has been for our good. Because I don't know about you, but I need all the reminders I can get. Now, I look forward to a time when we no longer need reminders that we have seen throughout our history that we might look at and call evil. That we won't need those reminders anymore because our consciousness has grown that much. But there's something going on here where we still need certain reminders, and getting them is good for us. Russia is good for us as a civilization. China is good for us as a civilization. Iran is good for us as a civilization. You can't say you believe in our teaching and not see that as well. We can't leave them out like somehow they're outside what we think of as being for the good. We have to find a way to see that not only say the words of they are good for us, but then find it. Find it in a way that really allows us to see that. Because there's nothing going on in all of civilization that isn't growing civilization towards its prime directive of love. Nothing. No matter how bad it may feel or look, nothing in the hugeness of the world that is not playing forth towards what is best for us. This isn't easy to see or accept or want to believe. I mean, that's what makes our teaching, not so easy. I was listening to Alan Watts this morning, and he was speaking on how kids, and obviously he's speaking back in the 60s, where he's saying kids today don't want to do the disciplined work of practice. They'd rather smoke marijuana, take LSD, or some other drug to bring them that level of consciousness, but it does not build discipline and does not allow them to fully recognize and live in and ground in that higher consciousness. And I think that is still true today, that many of us do not take the time to do the practice when we need it most. When we're upset with something that our loved ones did, when we're upset that something, or maybe we're really good at doing it with our loved ones, right? We're good with doing it with our loved ones. We've got this teaching down to where when it's our loved ones, okay, we know it's time to practice. We're really good with doing this teaching with our friends or the people who we know, but then you get a little further afield, right? And then all of a sudden, putting in the practice when it's something in politics, or it's Iran, or it's what Russia just did to the cyber attack that they just did, and how awful that is. Or it's Iran going back and doing their nuclear thing. Or it's the Sudan where they're still raping children. And all of a sudden, then using our teaching, because it gets a little rougher. And yet, it doesn't change what's true. What would actually help, what would actually feed what it is we want to see created in the world. And that is remembering that everything is for our good, no matter how evil, no matter how horrid it looks. It can't actually be that way because everything is for our good. There was an explosion in Nashville the other day, Christmas Day. How horrible. Somehow it's for our good. How do I know? It happened. It's part of civilization's experience now. And that's what we believe. Boy, those are the tough ones. Those are the tough ones. To bring our consciousness to that. Way easier to get a glass of wine or smoke a joint. Yeah, wow, man. But it's in the practice that we truly get to rise, pull back the lens, and say, well, 200 years ago, people were killing each other much more regularly than today. 500 years ago, somebody sitting beside me getting killed wouldn't have even made me flinch. 1,000 years ago, they were crucifying people like crazy, and 2,000 years ago, that was the way of the world. You didn't, an emperor didn't like the way you were crucified. Those things are not going on at the same level they were, and are certainly not accepted. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, just so we're clear, that we need to accept these hard things that are going on. Because I think that the fact that it rises our hearts, makes us care, is what the good is. And thus, then take some action that is ours to take. Because that is the next part of bringing civilization forward. So I started this conversation by saying that you are beautiful. And I'm trying to point out that all of life is. So I want to bring it back before I get too far afield to let you know that this appreciation you just showed for yourself is worthwhile to show towards others and to the events going on. That when you have a reaction to something that is not feeling loving, you are bringing loving to it. That this is the real key of the exercise. Not that we accept that these horrible things are going on, but that the good in them is that they are bringing our heart forth, and then hopefully some action to follow it up. Whether it's giving money to the cause that is trying to stop what is going on in the Sudan, or supporting Black Lives Matters, or voting at our election like we did, or whatever it is that brings forth for you, feeding the homeless. There's a million different ways in which we can bring forth that love that makes our lives beautiful. But the fact that you care at all, the fact that you feel that ignition, that little light, that spark, that's the word I'm looking for, that spark of love that comes forth in you whenever you see something that you know isn't loving. That's beautiful. The spark you feel towards anything that isn't loving is beautiful. That spark can turn into a flame that can light up the world. Your spark. And so when you look out and you see these things that don't fit a loving world, the fact that you have feel about that is beautiful. And I want you to acknowledge your beauty on that. I want you to feel your own sense of beauty because you have a spark. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. You have a spark and you bring it forth. I feel it. I see it. I see that spark in each and every one of you. Every time I get to see you, whether it's here or in person, the loveliness, the beauty of who you are comes through. The loveliness and beauty of who each of us is. And the more we acknowledge that spark in ourselves, really important in ourselves, and others, the more we ignite that light that will light up the world. This is the love that's possible. This is the love and the beauty I offer you to see about yourself today.
God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.